Hello bakers! Today we are working on a back to school cookie. Here I am using a tipless piping bag which I have snipped at the end. Now you don't want to snip off too much at the end because then you're going to have the icing coming out too fast and it's just going to flood over on the cookie from the sides. I am using a flooding consistency for both the outlining and the filling of the cookie. Use your scribe tool to get out any air bubbles. And also, before you move on to the top portion of the cookie, you want to make sure that this bottom portion, the yellow part, is a little bit dry, about 10-15 minutes. That way it doesn't bleed in with the top portion of the cookie. Now let's say you're decorating half a dozen or a dozen cookies. By the time you're done with the yellow part on that last one, you can go back to your first one and begin to flood the apple portion, and that should be enough time for it to not bleed through. Here I am using a tipless piping bag, and I'm also using a flooding consistency with the color red for both my outlining and the flooding. Use your scribe tool as necessary. Before moving on to the stem, you want to make sure that your apple is a little dry. So you're going to let it sit for about 10-15 minutes. And then for the stem, I'm using a flooding consistency for the outlining and for the flooding. For the leaf portion, I'm using a little bit thicker consistency. Once it's time to move on to the drawing portion, you want to make sure that your cookies are 100% dry. So let them dry overnight. Right here, I am using a Wilton edible marker. You can either use a fine tip point or a bold tip point. I'm using a bold tip point right here to draw a ruler down at the bottom and to draw some symbols on the apple portion. Now, if you have an airbrush machine, you can also use an airbrush with a stencil to airbrush the little symbols. Once you're done drawing the symbols, you want to make sure that you let them dry for about 2 to 5 minutes before you start writing on with royal icing. Otherwise, if you don't, the marker and the royal icing will bleed in together. For the writing, I'm going to be using a white royal icing, somewhat of a thick consistency, but not too thick. Now, if you want to do cursive writing, you want to make sure that your icing is a little bit thicker. And there you have it, folks. Thank you for dropping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.